name is Heather LaFoy, and my presentation is on gifted education in rural schools. First, we'll look at the PowerPoint presentation that I made as well as the website, and then we'll look over the handout that I created that can be used if you want to share these resources in a condensed version with people you may work with or people who can benefit from the information. And then we'll look at some resources that I have available. So first, let's look at the PowerPoint. Okay, so rural gifted students. This pre-assessment is for you to go ahead and do. So if you have a piece of paper handy, you can jot down your answers. And I want you to just do your best on it and answer, what exactly does rural mean? There's a lot of definitions, so just in your opinion at this point, what do you think it means? What percentage of your state do you think is considered rural? Do you think there are differing characteristics among different rural populations? And what are some challenges facing gifted students? So first, let's answer the question, who are rural gifted students? According to the U.S. Census, rural areas are areas that do not lie inside an urbanized area or urban cluster. And so I know that's kind of wordy. Basically, it says if they're not in an urban area, then they're in a rural area. So what exactly does that mean in terms of numbers? The U.S. Census Bureau explains that areas with 2,500 people or less are considered rural. So think back, what did you put for the percentage of students or percentage of counties in your state that you consider rural? And since I teach in Alabama, I included Alabama in this presentation. So there are 39 rural counties in Alabama and 28 urban counties. And then I came up with the percentage as well because Alabama has fewer counties than Mississippi. So I wanted us to be able to compare the two. So in Alabama, there's 57.35% of the counties are rural. And in Mississippi, there are 65 rural counties and 17 urban counties. So 79.27% of counties in Mississippi are rural. These are just some basic facts about rural schools. The enrollment is up 15%. There's a 55% increase in minority student enrollment in rural schools. 21.7% of all public school students attend rural schools. And then we have the definition again. On page 23 in our textbook, Special Populations and Gifted Education, Understanding Our Most Able Students from Diverse Backgrounds, there's a great chart, and it looks at different criteria that are characteristics of gifted children, and then it compares different types of gifted children. So we have urban students, and then rural disadvantaged students who are white, rural disadvantaged Hispanic students, and rural disadvantaged African American students. And so this chart is very interesting. I encourage you to get your book and look over that because it's a really good chart that just compares them and proves the point that just because a student is in a rural environment, not all rural areas are the same. And so now I want you to think about this question after you've looked at the table. What strikes you as the most surprising criteria and characteristics? And what differences do you notice between rural and urban populations? And I just can't brag on this chart enough because I love that it also has urban gifted students as well, so that we can even compare all three types of rural students who are listed here and compare them with the urban students. So once again, it's on page 33 in your textbook. Make sure to look at that. All right, some positive characteristics of rural schools. They are small schools with small classes, so they're easy to recognize the needs of all the students. When you have less students, it's easier to know their needs. In general, the communities are very supportive. You have a great opportunity to let the community be the classroom, such as going and visiting farms or ranches, or even having those people bring educational opportunities to the school. Usually, since it's such a small community, then people are more willing to help each other and to come and help students and help with education. Another advantage is that students rarely move, so they're together through every grade. They're able to form close relationships with one another. And another positive characteristic, educators know students' families, so they can be more motivated to reach their needs. All right, before we look at the challenges, I want to show you my website because it kind of goes with what we just went over. And I think this will help you later when you look at my website to kind of know how it's laid out. So the information we just looked at is on this homepage. We've got a basic definition, or basically what the site is about and how it can be used. And then down here we have just some facts on rural education, the statistics we discussed, comparing Alabama and Mississippi, and then also some benefits of rural schools that we went over. If you want to look more into this information, you can just click on the underline words and it will take you to the link where I got the information from. Or of course, it's cited underneath each point. Okay. Now back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so some challenges that gifted students face in rural communities. We talked about smaller classes as being a good thing, but it can also mean not so good things for gifted students. There's going to be fewer gifted students in a class, and there might be little to no training in gifted education for the teachers. So some solutions can be acceleration, provide opportunities for higher level classes or higher level grades if a student can accelerate to another grade with grade skipping. Higher level classes, if they're not talented in every subject, maybe their gift is just in math, then they can go ahead and go to the next grade level in math or the next class. I know acceleration is very popular in high schools, and that seems to be something that might be becoming a little bit more common in elementary schools, but it's something that should be encouraged, especially in these rural schools. Another option is cluster grouping. And cluster grouping is when several students from different grades are in the same class, and this is also extremely popular in high school. Independent or small group projects. And educators are able to take online courses or webinars, no matter where you're located. If you have access to the internet, then there are tons of resources available that can help educate anybody on gifted education. So not having access because you're not in a large city shouldn't be an excuse. Everyone who has access to the internet is able to learn more about gifted education. All right, our next challenges are lack of resources and a resistance to change and non-traditional careers. So some solutions to the lack of resources, obtaining advanced level books in the library through an interlibrary loan. And I wasn't familiar with interlibrary loan until I read more about different solutions. But basically, it allows different libraries to share books with each other, no matter their location. And so this would be a great way to get some new books into the library and to help students have books that they're interested in as well, and to provide more resources. Another solution is online counseling for students through discussion boards and video conferencing. Maybe there's not a counselor nearby who can help gifted students, but through online counseling using discussion boards and videos and just anything else that can be used online, such as this presentation, something like this, then that can be used to help students. It's important to provide exposure to non-traditional careers, and using the internet, you can do that. Sometimes smaller rural communities could be against change. They don't want their children to leave and get a different type of job, to get something that isn't normal. And maybe that is what the student's interested in, but they're a little conflicted and they don't know what to do. So it's good to provide that exposure and just to help the student know that if that's what they're interested in, then they need to be supported on that. Next, use examples and guest speakers of people who grew up in rural communities and are now succeeding in a non-traditional career. So if you have somebody in a rural school who has graduated and just excelled in a certain non-traditional career, whether they moved back into the rural community or not, they can be a guest speaker to come and let your students know about things that they can achieve as well. Okay, our next challenge is demographics could hinder gifted students and a lack of emphasis on education. So some solutions: create a gifted club to nurture and discuss gifted identity. And we'll talk more about gifted clubs later, but the gifted club could last, all the way through high school, and that could be something that those students do just to help each other learn more about giftedness and to rely on each other and to just be with people who are like them. Summer programs. And if money is an issue, scholarships are typically available with summer programs, and they're able to meet gifted students from other areas. This is very important that they have contact with other gifted students, and then that'll help them not to feel so different or like they're out of place. It'll help them to feel like they really fit in. You can also use newspapers and school programs to promote education. If the town is small and maybe they don't have a newspaper that really reaches their community, then even just a school kind of newspaper can be used, and it can also be used to recognize student achievement. And when students are encouraged and motivated, some of them, not all of them of course, but some of them will feel like they can succeed and they can do what their dreams really are. A temptation might be to close a small school. So a solution can be providing incentives to rural schools in order to encourage them to make use of distance learning and dual enrollment. Those are great options. Distance learning and dual enrollment are great options for gifted students. They just give them more opportunities to learn and grow in areas that might not be readily available in their school. And small schools can help give individualized attention to students. We kind of talked about that earlier with benefits of small schools, but smaller schools with less students, they're able to give more individualized attention. Another challenge can be brain drain, and I was not familiar with this term until I learned more about rural gifted students, but brain drain just means that gifted students graduate from high school, they leave their community for higher education, and they never return to help their community. So some solutions can be to involve students in the community while they're still in school so that you can encourage them that it's okay to leave and to pursue a higher degree, higher education, but don't forget about your community and the ways you can help it. Community members can be called upon to enrich the standard curriculum through job shadowing and internships. Another great thing about having professionals in your community who are willing to help is job shadowing and internship opportunities. This can keep students feeling like they have a close relationship with their community and that they don't want to leave it. Look back at your pre-assessment. What did you write down as the challenges that we're facing gifted students. And now I want you to write down, how can these challenges be overcome? So just think of a few things we just went over, just a couple that come to mind. How can we overcome some of these challenges that we talked about? Okay, and now I want to show you the section of my webpage that looks more at challenges and solutions for gifted students. Okay, if you go back up to the top, click on Rural Gifted Students, and it will tell you more about the site and then who those gifted students are. And down here we have information about challenges and solutions of rural education. So over here are the challenges, and then we have our solutions. And with all of these people's names, if you click on this, it'll take you to an article that's going to talk more about challenges. And a lot of these articles inspired the challenges and solutions that I wrote down. And so it can just tell you some more in-depth solutions as well, and how to really meet those needs on an even deeper level. And then, of course, the full citation is at the bottom. Okay, now let's look back at our PowerPoint. Okay, so we just finished up talking about challenges, and now parents. What can parents do? So a great thing for parents in rural communities is to create a parent support group. Work together and to talk about gifted children and how they can support each other and things that they're dealing with. They can share ideas and resources. And if a community is so small that there's not many rural gifted parents, gifted children's parents in that area, then they could reach out maybe to a neighboring community or a larger city that's nearby, or even join in on a state network that can support gifted students. But usually if it's more community centered, then it will be a little bit tighter knit, and people can really become more involved when there's less people in it. Another thing for parents to do is to become a mentor. We talked about guest speakers coming into the classroom and helping who are from the community. Well, the parents should definitely be involved in that. They can be mentors and help students. They also should be advocates for gifted education, and this doesn't just go for gifted parents who are in rural areas. Obviously, this would go for all parents. We hope that they're advocates for gifted education. They can share gifted resources with educators. Of course, you would want to do this in a way that would not offend an educator or anything, but if a parent was to find something that they think maybe can help other people better understand gifted students or help their child in the classroom, then they have a good relationship with an educator. They could share it with them, and then that could be shared with the whole school. They should promote educational opportunities such as college or university programs, summer programs, and they should work to understand gifted students, the needs of gifted students, the characteristics of gifted students. Just the better the parents understand the child, the less of, I don't want to say outcast, but I guess the less of an outcast than they might feel. If they feel like an outcast in their school, the parents should support them at home, and the best way to do that is to understand their needs. Okay, some identification methods. So identification should always be broad enough to include as many students as possible who would benefit from a gifted education program. You never want to eliminate a child because they excel in a certain area that you're not testing. You always want to make sure that you use both verbal and nonverbal testing tools when you're identifying. In most cases, identification methods that are using an IQ test, the IQ is expected to be at least 130 to automatically qualify for gifted services. Standard achievement tests are good for underachievers. Checklists and anecdotal reports from parents, teachers, peers, and the child under review, along with evaluations of the student's work or performance, are important with identification. Early identification is very important. You don't want to wait until a child's in high school to identify them as gifted. You want to identify them early so that you can help them with their needs. And multiple identification measures are necessary, including both verbal and nonverbal assessments to accurately identify gifted students, especially those from rural, poverty, or other disadvantaged situations. Okay, these are just some different examples of tests that can be used for identification. The first one is the Stanford Achievement Test. It is an achievement test, and it tests reading, math, language, spelling, study skills, science, social studies, and listening, and it's for grades K through 12. And that test has been around for a very long time. I believe it's in maybe the 10th edition now, I believe. And so that test is one that's extremely common and popular to use. Another achievement test is the Terra Nova, and it tests achievement in reading, language arts, math, science, and social studies, and it's for grades K through 12. Another identification test is the Cognitive Abilities Test Form 6, and it's a group ability test. So this can be given to numerous students at once. I wouldn't suggest giving it to more than 25 students at once because it is a very long test, but it tests verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal reasoning abilities, and it's for grades K through 12. The Torrance Test of Creative Thinking is a creative thinking skills test, and it tests fluency, flexibility, and originality. And it is for first grade all the way through adults. And our last identification test listed on here is the Scales for Rating the Behavioral Characteristics of Superior Students, and it's a teacher rating scale. It assesses students on 10 dimensions, which are learning, motivation, creativity, leadership, art, music, dramatics, planning, communication precision, and communication expressiveness. And it is for grades K through 12. Okay, before we get into curriculum options, I want to go ahead and show you where you can see more identification information on my webpage. And the identification tests that I listed obviously are not all the tests. They're just some that seem to be the most common from what I have seen about identification, and that can work the best in a rural setting. So go to More, click on Identification, and then scroll down. Here's just a little background information on the page and on identification. What to keep in mind. We kind of went over these, but I just want to stress that your goal should be to identify all gifted students, not just gifted students who fit a certain mold, and you should use verbal and nonverbal assessments. Down here are the different tests that we discussed, and if you click on each one, either the title or the picture, it'll take you to a link that can tell you more about each test. But I wanted to include a picture so that you would be more familiar with typically how they look. Okay. Now back to the PowerPoint, and we will look at some different curriculum options that are available if you are trying to plan out a gifted education program in a rural school. Okay, our first curriculum option is the school-wide enrichment model. This one is very popular. Separate studies have demonstrated its effectiveness in schools with widely differing socioeconomic levels and program organization patterns. The goal is to challenge students appropriately. It aims at helping students find their strengths, provide curriculum compacting opportunities, and individual learning styles and interests are considered. It focuses on independent and engaging learning. Another curriculum option is the Purdue three-stage model. And this model has 5 components that work together to create an appropriately challenging learning environment for gifted students. It's great for grades 2 through 6 and even pull-out programs. Thematic or topical units are typically used. And the 3 stages in the model are Stage 1, development of divergent and convergent thinking skills. Stage 2, problem-solving tasks. And Stage 3, student interest topics and independent study. So as you can tell, things get a little bit more complex as students progress through the 3 stages of this model. Another option is the total school cluster grouping. And this is a little bit different because it benefits all students. It's for high achievers, both gifted and not gifted, and they are placed in the same classroom. So students who even aren't gifted but are high achievers can be placed in the same classroom as gifted students. This does affect all students and teachers because now in the other class you're going to have students who may not be high achievers. This does increase the ability of all teachers to meet the individual academic needs of their students. It can improve student achievement. And the main way it improves student achievement for all students is because your high achievers, who might be the ones who are always shining in the classroom, aren't in the same class as maybe some of the mediocre to even low achieving students. And so now those mediocre and low achieving students, they're going to have some leaders and some high achievers rise up in their classrooms. And so it helps all students to benefits all students. It's cost effective. And another benefit is that gifted students are with gifted trained teachers full time. They're not leaving their teacher to go to a pull-out program. They're not leaving a general ed classroom. They're with a gifted teacher all the time. Many different programs and models can be used in a rural gifted program. We just went over 3 popular ones. So which program model would you use in a rural gifted program and why? The school-wide enrichment model, the Purdue three-stage model, total school cluster grouping, or would you use a different model that we didn't discuss? You can write down on your paper your thoughts since it's still fresh on your mind. Okay, the socio-emotional needs of students, of gifted students, just from what I've seen, I feel like this area is the easiest to ignore because it doesn't always seem like it has the most fruit come from it. You can't make things to show off what you've taught your students. So this one, at least for me, is the hardest for me to help my students with, but it's extremely important for all students and especially rural gifted students. This video by Dr. James T. Webb that I'm going to show you discusses gifted students and fitting in. So we'll flip over to the web page. It's also on my website. Okay, so go up to More and Programming. And here is information about the 3 models we went over together. And then meeting the socio-emotional needs of students. So I want us to watch this video and just think about what he says about gifted students and their struggle fitting in and how that relates to gifted students who are growing up in rural communities.
Think that being bright, a person would be able to figure out a solution to many problems. Many gifted kids can, a lot cannot, and they, in their attempt to find a solution, they end up going into alcohol, drugs, cutting themselves, anorexia, bulimia. The studies show there is a higher incidence of gifted people who are the cutters, who are the anorexics, the bulimics, And there's an interesting study recently out of Great Britain showing that gifted adults are more likely to abuse alcohol and drugs than are people who are not so bright and talented. My take on it is that many of them are trying to numb themselves to endure situations that really are unendurable. And I often tell people to help them understand this, that in our educational system, and actually I think in our society, conformity, mediocrity, and fitting in have become more valued than innovation, excellence, and creativity. And that's the world that these kids have to live in. They try to find a place where they can fit in. They have to conform. They have to be mediocre. And it hurts their soul.
Okay, so he just discussed some great points about gifted students and their struggle to fit in. And from what I've learned about gifted students in rural schools, that just fits them so well, especially since there may not be many gifted students in a rural community. So just having less students, you feel like you really have to fit in with kids who aren't gifted. And so we need to make sure that we encourage these students to use their gifts and talents and not hide them and not be ashamed of them, and just do their best with what they have and not feel like they have to conform to everything else. Okay, now we'll switch back to our PowerPoint and go over the last section. Okay, services and programs. So we touched on these earlier. These are just more ways that you can help gifted rural students. Gifted clubs, they can discuss attributes of giftedness and it can promote gifted qualities. Summer camps, scholarships are available. They can carpool to gifted day camps if there's not one near their community. Mentorships, opportunities to meet leaders who have grown up in rural communities and they can provide guidance. Sometimes a teacher or an educator just doesn't get through to a gifted child like they want. So a mentor might be that extra adult that can really make a difference in a student's life. What to remember. Common themes on effective interventions for rural gifted students include the role of significant others, the use of technology and distance learning, specific curriculum interventions, and instructional management strategies such as acceleration and grouping. So some consultative advice that you can give to teachers who just don't know how to deal with these gifted students in their rural classrooms. Scaffold instruction and scaffolding from lower level to higher level thinking skills through the use of a critical thinking curriculum also has shown promise for rural students in schools of poverty. Advanced curriculum. Exposure to advanced curriculum can help rural gifted students achieve at higher levels than expected or provided by the typical on-grade level curriculum. We should never doubt a student's ability, and we should just give them that chance to excel in different areas. So acceleration is an economical choice. Grade skipping, subject acceleration, cross-grade grouping, and in-class advanced curriculum. It focuses on students' needs, skill level, and progress while documenting changes. Grouping is also an option. Grouping is a bit controversial. A study of grades 3 through 5 found that high-achieving students who participated in the cluster groups showed a significant increase in reading achievement and math achievement over their non-cluster grouped counterparts. Okay, these are some resources that are online. These are just different websites. The National Association of Gifted Children, Birdseed Gifted, Davidson Gifted, and Hoagie's Gifted. These are some different curriculums that can be used in a gifted classroom, and these are all great resources, and I've either used some of these in my classroom or I plan to use some of these in the future, and I'll show you the actual books of those in a second that I have with me. some available book resources on rural gifted education, the challenges of educating the gifted in rural areas, gifted by Dr. Lewis, gifted education in rural environments, and that's from the book Special Populations in Gifted Education, Understanding Our Most Able Students from Diverse Backgrounds, and Serving Gifted Students in Rural Settings by Tamara Samball. And this is my works cited with all the sources I used for my presentation. So now I want to show you back to the website and some resources how you can get to them using the website so you don't have to try and remember all of them. And that way it'll be easier to share with others. Go up to More, Resources and Research. And here's where we have all the resources listed. So you can just click on any of them and it'll take you to the website. NAGC, that's the National Association of Gifted Children. Birdseed, Davison Hoagies. These are some research articles that are useful. These are some different books on rural students, rural gifted students that can be useful, and curriculum. Let's see. Different curriculum. Prufrock Press is great. It has a lot of different resources that can be used for differentiation, for challenging students, and for gifted education. And then these are links to some of the other books that I'm going to show you. And then down here we have what can general education teachers do, so the consultative advice that we talked about, and then what can parents do that we talked about earlier. So I can tell it's a little bit small, at least on my screen it is, but if you just go to the website, then it'll open up and you'll be able to see it much better. And then if you go down to presentation, you can find the PowerPoint that I went over today, as well as this handout. And I do want to show the handout to you. So this can be used if you're trying to share some of this information with others. We've got the website up here at the top if you want to look back and see some resources from the website. Pretty much everything we went over today, for the most part, is on here, just in a much more condensed version. And it's just on 2 pages, so you could copy it front and back if you needed to pass it out to some people. Okay, and so that is my website. And now I want to show you some of the book resources that we talked about. So some curriculum you can use with gifted students. This one is CSI Expert, and there's a link to it on the website. But I plan to use this one in my classroom next year. I've heard really good things about it and about differentiation, and I believe it's grades 5 through 8 can use this. So that can be a good exploratory that can be used in the classroom. This one, Explorations as well as Viewpoints. They're from the same series, and they're differentiated curriculum. Links to that can be found on the website too. They are intermediate level for grades 4 through 6. And with all these materials, I would just say that it's important to differentiate even further so that it fits the needs of your students, and you never just want to copy what exactly is from a book, but it is a good starting point that can be used. Another curriculum guide that I've used is 101 Success Secrets for Gifted Kids, and it's laid out really kid-friendly. And so there's a lot of success secrets. There's 101. So you probably won't have time to go over all those with your students, but you could pick some of the best ones, and they're just about a page long, and you can go over those with your kids. Something else that you can use are these menu books. They have them, this one's for grades 6 through 8, but they have them for grades K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 8. And they're in all the core subjects, so math, language arts, social studies. There's also a science one, and I have used these with consultation this year, even with my students, and I know that these would be beneficial in a rural setting because there's so many options so that you can meet needs of gifted students. The activities are great. There's lots of choice, lots of students options just to make decisions for themselves. Okay, and then some of the information from the presentation today comes from, these are both great for rural areas with gifted students. So this one is from a series called the Practical Strategy Series in Gifted Education, and it can be found on Prufrock Press, and it has a lot of great resources in it. Every book, they're small, every book is a different topic. So this one is rural areas. There's also stuff with gifted females, and these are great, some great small resources that are easy to read. And then this one is on all kinds of special populations. It was our textbook in the class, but of course it has some great resources. And then of course, this book, it can help with designing programs for gifted students, as well as this one. So I hope that this presentation has helped you learn more about gifted students in rural schools and how to help them. And I will be posting the discussion board questions soon, so please answer them and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.